Good morning to all, sir, and welcome to all guests and participants. My job is today to see Professor Yadav, sir, will introduce all guests, and my job is to introduce today the host of this webinar is Maharashtra Academy of Sciences and CMET and Pune University. So first of all, I would like to schedule. I will just put the schedule here. Professor Yadav will introduce the guest and welcome address, and then we'll start with the presidential address and with the distinguished lecture.
Yeah. Should I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Mashelkar, Dr. Bhatkar, Dr. Karmalkar, Dr. Kale, and all invited guests and dear participants. During this lockdown, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and henceforth, we'll have to change our lifestyle and there will be a new normal. And that new normal will be different from different ages and locations. Never in our wildest dreams a year ago, we would have imagined that the world will be practically closed for business, but it happened. And everybody is vulnerable now. In this connection, the entire world came to know social or physical distancing, hand sanitization, and keeping the mouth shut. So abruptly, because of this pandemic, the energy scenario also across the globe has become topsy-turvy. And we would not have imagined the so-called negative price of crude oil in April 2020. And bafflingly, it happened. And slowly it recovered to another low normal. The Brent crude oil spot price has averaged about $18 a barrel in April 2020. And unless that rises to something like $45 a barrel, the industry will not be viable, as some pundits predict. And that has changed the whole scenario. Whether it is chemicals, materials, energy, everything has changed. Add to that the price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia, which brought down the crude prices substantially low, and it also affected the spot price. And this has also impacted some other businesses. And that business is the so-called fracking business in the United States. Debates on global recession and even depression are being discussed by media. The fracking business is affected to such an extent that it is practically coming to a level of extinction, and 7 of the most active fracking companies in Texas have already cut $7.6 billion from their budgets as a response to the collapse in oil prices. And in this situation, we have seen the price of materials. And what happens in this particular case, the so-called personal protection equipment, which are materials, is a common vocabulary. The chemical and allied industries, including pharmaceuticals and drugs, found a new respect. The damned and banned plastics have come to the rescue in all forms and sizes. The importance of polymer and plastic industry will be more evident since we want to be protected from all viruses, bacteria, and the unknown microscopic creatures and bugs, which are going to be a huge problem for the society at large. We need plastics more now than before to remain safe. The mask of all hue and color, medicines, sanitizers, food products, water, and whatnot. Plastics is a savior now for the humankind. Plastics for the public, it may be the polythene bags which are littered everywhere, but in the wider sense of the term have been part and parcel of our modern life for at least past 70, 80 years. And you cannot imagine a world without plastics. Plastic ban was such a policy decision which did not solve the problem totally. What is the substitute for plastic and what cost? And its convenience to use. In the first place, plastic was introduced to the commoners as a substitute for paper, which was responsible for denudation of the forest. A ton of paper requires about 1.5 tons of chemicals and 30 tons of water. Glass is no substitute. Glass processing is done at 1500 to 1600 degrees Celsius, needing a lot of energy, and it releases NOx and SOx. Glass is about 22 times heavier than plastic and susceptible to breakage. So glass is also made from all natural resources such as sand, soda ash, limestone, and recycled glass. However, it is important to note that we are running out of sand that's used to make glass in the first place. Worldwide, we go through usage of 50 billion tons of sand every year. That is twice the amount produced by every river in the world. So glass is no good. So what it means, at the same time, all food packaging materials are 100% recyclable. So whether you choose to buy a plastic bottle, a can, or glass, all these can be recycled. Materials are important. Furthermore, the solution in terms of paper or glass as substitute to paper is to assume that you throw it after use and it will not cause pollution and nature will take care of it. It is a short-sightedness. I think the ban on single-use plastic was a knee-jerk reaction without finding an alternate economically viable and easily adaptable material. Ban is never good in a democratic country because ban leads to all sorts of social problems, illegal businesses, and corruption by the law enforcing authority. It is absolutely true that we have to reduce waste, be that plastic, metal, or debris. A long-term solution is needed. Plastic, which is already in the environment, and the plastic of the future will require two different approaches. The history of technology teaches us that if one technology creates a problem, another solves it. So better technology is the only solution. Better methods of collection of waste at source and segregation, recycle, reuse, depolymerization, mixing with bitumen for road making, etc., are well practiced, but not fully implemented, and the list is long. Government of Maharashtra's last year's decision to ban even non-woven polypropylene bags, which are 100% recycled, was also short-sightedness. PP is used for face masks, surgical masks, N95, and hazmat dresses. Now they are importing from abroad, for instance, China, and ban on single-use plastic should be temporarily lifted to deal with the grave health crisis India is facing, for that matter, the world. And the protocol for such waste disposal must be in place. Those who collect and dispose such waste need to be protected. I had suggested to the government that no plastic is bad. Wrapping or container be given free, but it should be sold with a refundable deposit of at least 1 to 5 rupees per item, depending on the potential to pollute. Like the newspaper delivery boy comes in the morning to our doorstep, let another person come to collect the plastic bags, bottles and cans and the like, and the refund of part of money, charging some collection fee, which could be 5 to 10%, and this could be done digitally, promoting digital India. So this is what should have been done. And I personally believe Corona has changed our life. Everybody will use sanitizers, disinfectors, face masks, and the chemical and allied industry and the drug industry will come to the fore. And this is what is going to happen. At the same time, there will be a confluence of chemical sciences and engineering with biological sciences and engineering. If you want to develop therapeutics or vaccines, use biocides, masks, and pesticides. Ladies and gentlemen, this particular webinar we organize on behalf of Maharashtra Academy of Sciences, CMED, and University of Pune, because we believe this is a very important topic, and the only way we can connect is through webinars. So I personally believe that materials of all sorts which are produced and the synthetic materials which are produced come from chemical and allied industry. And therefore, the importance of chemical and allied industry cannot be undermined. We must also know that about 70% of industrial chemicals are used to make some other chemicals, which are never sold off the shelf in general market. And therefore, we ban import from China, the chemical and allied industry, whether it is intermediates, API, drug, agrochemicals, they will have a great future. Of course, the processes and products must be manufactured by using green chemistry and engineering. Plant must be safer and smarter. And we are also seeing after the reopening of industries, after the lockdown, some dozen accidents have taken place in the industry, and that is very bad. Therefore, chemical safety and risk management, worker training and loss prevention must be strictly followed. And the chemical industry will be a major contributor to India's dream of $5 trillion economy by 2024. And I'm sure Indian industry will rise to the occasion. Ladies and gentlemen, be prepared for a new life which will pervade us in all sectors, whether you like it or not. Social distancing has come, and also virtual closeness. Hugging is gone, but not love and respect. Handshake is gone, but namaste will stay. With these few words, I have the honor of introducing to the great giants of today. In fact, both of them don't need any introduction because they are household names in India, particularly in Maharashtra. So I will start with Dr. Vijay Bhatkar, whom I have known, and being a Warkari also, it is a great honor to know him. Dr. Bhatkar is well-known computer scientist, and his Param, which has been known to everybody, the supercomputers, when there was a ban from abroad, particularly from United States, he's the one who led the mission. And obviously, because of his contribution to Indian science and technology, he has been honored with Padma Bhushan and Padma Shri before that, and Maharashtra Bhushan. In fact, he's the Chancellor of Nalanda University, another great university. Dr. Bhatkar, welcome to this seminar, and we love you because you are one of our very major source of inspiration. And what should I say about Dr. R.A. Mashelkar? He has been a mentor, and he has been so affectionate to me. I worked with him for 10.5 years as Vice Chancellor of Institute of Chemical Technology. So what is given on his website, like, I know beyond that. He's just not a dangerous optimist. He will make a dead person come alive and start talking. That is his beauty. And he has done it to many people, whether he got some GRD Tata Corporate Leadership Award or something else, whatever others could not imagine, who held that position before of Director Generalship, Dr. Mashelkar has done it. And just not the poverty which he faced during his lifetime has not affected him. On the contrary, he created Mrs. Anjali Mashelkar Award for innovation because his mother was innovative, and so he is. And so we know that his fight against the US patents, the turmeric patent and basmati patent, and we know that the Haldi Ghatachi Ladai, whatever we used to say jokingly, but that is true. And Dr. Mashelkar, he has been guiding so many companies in the country, being on the board of directors, whether it is a innovation center of Reliance and whatnot. And he is the one who transformed CSIR, world's largest chain of laboratories, and also he is the chairman of the Global Alliance. And no wonder he has received so many honors. I don't know. Last time when he had told me he had some 42 honorary doctorates, and if he has added during the lockdown the 43rd, I am not aware of it, but I'm sure it will happen soon. And that is the reason the government of India, and one of the things what many people don't know, whenever the government was in trouble, they used to appoint a committee and call it Dr. Mashelkar Committee. So such for 12 different committees are contagious issues he has led and given solutions to the government. And he once told me about his dialogue with the late Prime Minister, our beloved Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who said that appoint Dr. Mashelkar to solve this problem as the chairman of the committee. So obviously the government loves him and his contribution to the great country. So he has got Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan and Padma Vibhushan. Dr. Mashelkar, sir, what could I say more than this? And you have been a deadly optimist, and you, time and again, you must have said in many, many conferences that you would like to come back in the year 2050 to see that India is really a great advanced nation. It may happen because India has such a great potential. And I'm sure that with the guidance of Dr. Bhatkar and Dr. Mashelkar, our Maharashtra Academy of Sciences can go to the next level. With these few words, I once again welcome all of you for this webinar on materials, for sustainable development. Thank you so much.
Dr. Kale, please.
Unmute. Sir, please unmute yourself.
It's my duty to introduce our Maharashtra Academy President, Professor G.D. Yadav. I think Professor G.D. Yadav, he also he's a very famous personality, and presently he's an emeritus professor of eminence through the J.C. Bose National Fellow, Government of India, and everybody knows he's the former Vice Chancellor of Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai. And during his tenure in ICT, he has done a lot of work for the ICT. He has created 2 more centers for the ICT in Jalna as well as in Bhubaneswar. And if you see, he's a fellow of so many academies, national as well as international. Apart from his administrative career, you can see here he is a member of most of the committees in DSTs, CSR, DBT, and he's also a member in the BRICS international bilateral programs. Apart from his administrative career, you can see he is a very good scientist. If you can see his intellectual output, he has published more than 450 papers. You can see, along with his administrative career, publishing 450 papers is not a simple thing. And 115 patents. Among these 115 patents, 70 patents are the world patent, these are around European patents. And he has produced more than 100 PhDs and more than 115 master students. Now his H-index is 57, and he has published 3 books. If you can imagine such kind of excellent academic career, along with his the administrative responsibilities, it is a great achievement for him. And the next person is our host is Professor Nitin Karmarkar. He is the Vice Chancellor of Pune University, and Professor Karmarkar is well known for, he is very famous in our students, and he is basically the geologist. He's a PhD in geologist. His research interest in igneous petrology with special emphasis on the mantle petrography and geochemistry. He was a professor in the Department of Geology, means he was the head of Department of Geology, and now he is a Vice Chancellor of the Pune University. He has also published more than 100 papers and completed many projects of geology, and he traveled a lot in other countries in connection with these all geology related projects. He also works as a director IQAC and has been motivating academics towards quality assurance. This provides him with a blend of strong academic research experience and administrative expertise. I request Honorable Vice Chancellor to address the gathering.
Very good morning to all. Indeed, it's a pleasure to first of all welcome 2 giants, Honorable Dr. Mashelkar sir, Honorable Vijay Bhatkar sir, the President Maharashtra Academy of Sciences G.D. Yadav sir, Secretary Bharat Kale, and fellow participants in this webinar. In fact, I'm connected to both the giants. Although I'm a small person, but incidentally, in recent times, for many activities, perhaps many with Bhatkar sir, in fact, the very creation of Param that happened on the campus of the University of Pune, And during my time, CDAC got a place outside the campus and they decided to shift. So I requested them, like, you all can shift, but not the Param. The Param would continue to stay on the campus and we'll create something together so that it would be beneficial to the student community. So we have created a Center for Excellence in Data Science and Artificial Intelligence in the same building. I said not to worry about basically the charges and all that. I'll take care of everything, electricity, everything I'll take care of. But the Param should remain on the campus. Beside that, in recent time, basically being the chairman of the Deccan College deemed university, wherein together we are doing quite many good things. The pace of the activity is slowed down because of the COVID and because of some administrative happenings at the Deccan College. But I'm pretty sure in times to come, the dream that he actually carries, creating basically a multi-university, and that is what we are following it up on the Deccan College campus. Mashelkar sir, who doesn't know him, first of all, he, to an extent, I would call him like my father-in-law, because my wife, she's a student of Mashelkar sir. So in that respect, actually, he's my father-in-law. And then later on, basically for many years, he used to come on the campus. In fact, during recent time, the postdoctoral fellowship that we created on the campus, and when he completed his 75th birthday, we actually did the celebration on the campus. And one of the fellowship, basically, the postdoctoral fellowship is named after Mashelkar sir. Besides that, he has been a mentor to not necessarily only Pune University, but many such institutes. So they are the pillars behind all these national institutes, national universities as such. And looking at them, that's always inspiring to take this basically march forward. And in the COVID time, in fact, the University of Pune, along with NCL, along with ICER, along with basically some industry partners, maybe the Persistent Foundation, KPIT, DRDO, we have been putting all efforts basically in creating some kind of a basically database suggestions, evidence-based suggestions, and that we are giving it to the administration, municipal corporation, basically to curb the spread of this particular disease. So entire of the basically the medical data that gets curated, for which the app development, and beside that the immunological survey, the epidemiological survey, then the creation of COVID testing, lot many things we have been doing together, a creation of a ventilator. So all those things are happened only because of basically this kind of association. And especially when we are speaking about Maharashtra Academy of Sciences, we should actually to a great extent bring all these institutes together. There has to be a seamless integration of various different branches. And so because of which there would be a meaningful research that would happen, which to an extent would suffice the need of the society, what is required presently. To a great extent, I always feel that despite the fact that I had 6 life science departments on the campuses, I felt that we failed miserably in dealing with this particular disease as such. And therefore, this COVID thing has taught us many good things. We should consider this as not as a threat, but as an opportunity to come together. And to a great extent, because today's topic is the material science and the sustainable technology, that is what we will be, both the speaker would be speaking on. And this is the need of the time. In fact, there is a creation of a molecular diagnostic center that is happening on the campus of the University of Pune, wherein we are taking care of all the communicable respiratory diseases. And for the first time, I'm so happy that so many institutes have joined hands with. So there is medical science for the first time after its separation as a separate medical university. For the first time, the medical fraternity has joined us. And this is what basically research is all about. And Maharashtra Academy of Sciences, again, the very birth of this academy happened on the campus of the University of Pune. My own mentor and philosopher, Professor V.G. Bide, it was his idea. It began in the physics department, and later on, actually I kept on moving from one place to the other. But now I'm again bringing it back on the campus of the University of Pune. I have already had discussion with G.D. Yadav sir. We'll be creating a permanent sort of a space for this particular academy, and wherein obviously there would be office, there would be auditorium, and all sorts of activities that are required to run this particular smoothly. In fact, soon you would hear that there would be a small activity maybe for children, the Science Congress in the form of a webinar. We'll make the announcement very soon, and so that basically things have become very easy through basically Zoom and other things. We can get connected very easily, and so many people also do not mind it to join so easily, and therefore we'll take this particular thing forward. I'm so happy today this webinar is happening after a long time, and the student community and the scientific community will certainly cherish this particular sort of a webinar, and this will inspire them to take their research further. Thank you so very much once again for giving this opportunity to have a little talk on this webinar. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the help of Maharashtra Academy. At least now we expect something from you, that we should have space in Pune University as we discuss. Now I request Bhatkar sir for his presidential address.
Thank you, Bharat. I hope now I'm visible and also audible
Yes,
to
sir.
all,
Yes.
including the, I don't know how many participants are now there.
139, 140.
140, yeah, 140 participants. Yes, I'm seeing that, yes. Thank you, I think. I'm seeing in front of me Dr. Mashilkar, I think. And I must pay my, I think it's such a great, I don't know, sometime one occasion I'd said that though we are not born from the from the womb of same mother, but I think I couldn't have expected a guidance and friendship and mentorship and love and affection from anybody else. So it has been such a thing. It is one of the greatest. I think I must have done some punyas that I met Dr. Mashilkar on the in the context of CDAC, and when Dr. Mashilkar became the member of the governing council, and later on we were the members of the Prime Minister Committee, Science and Technology. All along, I think there is so many occasions, and I'm very inspired to see him. I think the very appearance of this, very image of him is so inspiring, as Dr. Yadav said. Dr. Yadav played, I think, I was speaking from heart. I think, and because anybody who gets associated with, I think his heart will flower, and even can do some impossible things which are considered almost impossible, what we can accomplish. So today, when Bharat was talking to me that they are organizing through Maharashtra Academy of Sciences this webinar on material science, materials research, and of course materials research in the context of human development or sustainable development or sustainable technologies. So this webinar was conceived. And of course, when this webinar was conceived, we decided to invite Dr. Mashilkar and Dr. G.D. Yadav, and of course, in the Maharashtra Academy of Sciences context and Pune University, I think with Dr. Karmarkar. So I'm very happy. First thing, I have a big challenge here, and I have to do impossible thing because I know very little of material science or chemistry or elements for that matter. And I'm supposed to give a presidential address. There is often a tradition when you have to select a president for a particular occasion, not true for everybody. You generally select I think amongst the very intellectuals and knowledgeable people, you select the least knowledgeable, supposed to be perceived as more wiser or something elder, and put him on the presidential position. This is not true for, this is actually true for me in this seminar. So forgive me for my ignorance. I think I would say that, I remember the words of Socrates here, more because I'm going to express something, my comments or my words in certain philosophical sense. And when this morning when I got up, I said, what is the topic I should speak on in presidential address? And And I said it's about material science. And I started looking within myself, what do I know about materials? What do I know about materials? And then I started getting into the definition of materials. What is material and what is non-material? And in the philosophical sense, or in the poetic sense, what is material and what is immaterial? So, and I said to Bharat that in this my address or in my talk, on my thoughts, I will speak on material and immaterial science. So, of course, we are talking about material technology, material science, but there is also immaterial science. And we cannot understand material science without immaterial science. I have been pursuing for some time, I think, the understanding of immaterial sciences. The sciences of, you can say, of mind, sciences of information, science of knowledge. It's indeed so that if you ask, what is the information science? We say it is non-material science in that sense, in today's context. So today I will now bring before you in this context the statement of Socrates, which is a very great philosophic statement and very, I think, far-reaching statement. And that is, he said that the only thing I know is I know nothing. So today, when I'm speaking to you, that I'm talking from that knowing nothing about this material science. But I remember my memories goes back to the days when I started working in the Electronics Commission. Professor Menon was the president. Dr. Mashelkar is very aware of this one. We had already done some remarkable work in Atomic Energy Commission, and this was followed by Space Commission under the leadership of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. And it is during that time, it was conceived that both by Dr. Bhabha and Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, that the next thing we should do, the nation should do, is that we must introduce what is called Electronics Commission. I think we must, without the progress in Electronics Commission, we would not be able to advance our science and technology. And that's how I think I got associated with the Electronics Commission. I had done my PhD at that time from IIT Delhi, and Dr. Sheshgiri, I think, as inspired by Professor Menon, he went to various IITs to select the first team. I think that's what they did earlier also, and I was selected amongst them. And when we came to, I had migrated. I think I must say that in IIT Delhi for my PhD, I had migrated from engineering, really in that sense, because engineering I went to more abstractions. Engineering I went to more, say, mathematical models. And I started asking questions that there are so many branches of engineering. We talk about so many electrical engineering, civil, mechanical, applied mechanics, and we talk of so many branches of engineering. And I started coming from, I think, asking more and more philosophical questions. I came to the thing like that, what does it mean? Is there meta engineering, by which, knowing which, you can know all engineering branches, which are today there and which are going to be there tomorrow? So I started asking this question, and at that time, I think a key paper arrived. I think arrived from Bertalanffy, and he talked about systems engineering. So if you study the systems, you know everything. And consider the underlying mathematical models, the abstract part of engineering. If you study that, I think you can enter, I would say, you can enter any engineering branch, including chemical engineering. So I decided to stop studying, I think, the electrical engineering, or stop studying control engineering at that time, which was getting very popular. I entered systems engineering. From system engineering, I entered into mathematics, because systems engineering based on mathematical models. And I was interested not in differential equations or integral equations or other forms of mathematical equations, but I was interested in the mathematics, I think the models of the models itself, what is called meta models. And so I entered that, and I entered abstract mathematics, and from which I went to philosophy. And from this, I went to metaphysics and meta sciences like that. So that has been my journey in the process. So today, I was asking the question to myself, Bharat, was that what is material and what is immaterial? And I think you got a glimpse of it sometime. We went to this one, we started, I think there was this thing that, can we do science through remaining silent? So science through silence was the thing like that. get into silence and do science. In fact, there is a prerequisite for doing some deeper level of science. And I think we had some experience with this Dr. Kare and his colleagues that we used to meditate first and then of course talk about something very interesting which is emerging on material science game or on the scientific game. That was, I think, the understanding the nature of neutrinos. I think the neutrino particles. So and then what is the implication of this for the material science? So that's what I think. During those discussions, this idea came that we should have a seminar, and today we manifest this seminar in materials research. I asked this question of what is material for that matter. As soon as the materials we talk about, materials means that something exists like fundamental elements that manifest, that we see, that we play with on this earth. And the question comes, and of course, then as soon as you talk about materials or elements, suddenly the periodic table appears before you. I was not very good in chemistry, so I don't remember, as I go into my 75th year very soon, I don't remember all the names of all the elements, but I see the periodic table before me of actually is what we have discovered, what we have imagined, and what we think that our 118 elements, fundamental elements, and the periodic table comes before me, and the question comes that we have 118 elements. We have so far, I think, discovered, and some of them we have invented also. This one. Suppose I go on a different planet. Suppose I go on Mangalyaan. So I go to Mars. Will I get some other elements? Can I discover not more than something 180 elements, their properties and their structures? Suppose I go to some other galaxy. Will there be other elements? Or is the universe consists of entirely different elements which we have never seen, which I never imagined before? The answer to that question is mostly no. Anywhere you go in this universe, including I think maybe the black holes, then you will see the same, perhaps you will see the same elements, and perhaps we may discover or we may create something else. So I think when we talk of matter or materials, it is these elements we are talking about, understanding them, how they react with each other, and we must understand the Mendeleev's, I think the periodic table very well if you have to get into the world of materials. And they say, is there something beyond materials? Yes. I think we know now that as the new century started arriving, we started suddenly discovering that other than the matter, there is something like the matter that cannot be cognited, that is not but can be imagined in our mind, can be imagined, can be logically, I think, imagined in mind. That is called dark matter, which cannot be cognited, which cannot be observed, but it is there. I know and then we talk about dark matter, we must talk, as soon as we talk of matter, we will talk about energies. So there is dark energy, there is dark energy. So if the universe is now pervaded, as we know today, most of it, 94.95%, I think universe is pervaded by dark matter, and whatever we see is hardly some 4%. So we see actually the matter in the form of this just 4% of the entire universe that we have so far imagined. So that is what is that? What is that dark matter? Of course, now we see on the Pune University campus, Professor Karmakar is there. I think the Ayuka and all that, people are exploring what is the nature of dark matter, and that is one of the obsession now. That large number of great minds are thinking of what is this dark matter and dark energy, and what is their implication in this universe. So beyond that, I think beyond this dark matter and dark energy, something, I think there is something more than that kind of thing, which must be thought. What does it consist of? And my exploration, I think that matter, that existence is something like which you have missed out in discussion in any material science, is information. The world consists of, the universe consists of matter, three major things: energy and information, and they all exist together. I think it's not just, we may talk information as energy, and it is somewhere related to energy and something, but there is energy is beyond, I think it transcends both matter and energy. And that's why I think and I come from that science. What is the nature of information? The fundamental question that was asked by some great, starting from Alan Turing and later on some scientists, we asked those questions kind of thing, that what is the relation of information and energy, or matter for that matter. So this question is occupying my mind these days, that coming out with that equation. There is already an equation, what we have come out with from entropy perspective, which came that entropy, because the information is related to entropy, related to organization of knowledge. So these things, and it's my dream to think that to find out that relationship between, clearly define that equation, all the thing, or during my lifetime I'll be able to see that relationship, though it is in some form, it has already been expressed by some great minds and so on. But the wonder of that information is that today, if we talk about the information technology, I remember, I think we talk about electronics when I was born. I was born in 1946, and from that, the idea of, I think the Alan Turing's idea started appearing before us at that time, and also the idea of transistor appeared at that time, 1947, at Bell Labs, and those three scientists who discovered the electronics effect, and all three of them got Nobel Prize, and then it was unleashed. The whole electronic science got unleashed at that time, starting from transistors to the integrated circuits, to later on in the 71 time, the microprocessor, and then of course the internet, and then web, and all that thing. Suddenly, you have been seeing from very your birth, I think, the entire emergence of a totally new thing which we had not thought of. Of course, electronics was there in some form earlier itself, but in that sense that this industry, this technology will be so far-reaching that none of us imagined. In fact, every invention in information technology has surpassed all our imaginations. Today, if you ask the people who had invented the transistor, or even for that matter microprocessor, or that matter the internet, or for that matter web, and now this mobile phones and all those kind of things, they surpassed all our imagination, their impacts. Even the inventors could not imagine their impacts on the society at large. What we are seeing is that perspective. So now the question comes, the relationship between information and materials, science, or for that matter, the physics aspect of it. See, today, this transistor or the electronics is one invention of Bell Labs. We are trying to create a switch, like electrical switch. I think we are trying to create a transistorized switch to express two positions. It exists and it does not exist, on or off, or for that matter, single position. And in order to express that single symbol, we have to have the non-existence of that symbol or some other existence of that symbol. So zero and non-zero is the complement of that kind of thing, because I can't imagine what is zero unless there is something else with reference to something else, and that is non-zero for that matter, which we call one, this one. And that creates the whole drama of this whole universe. This fundamental representation, it can express not numbers, not any numbers, all numbers, not only real numbers, but also complex numbers or imaginary numbers and different kinds of numbers. I think somebody says that whole universe is, I saw Stephen Hawking's book, and God created the integer. I think it's a very massive book on that model. So today we are able to express all numbers, not only numbers, information technology, but all letters, all that humans can imagine. I think, all letters, all symbols, all creations, all colors, all voice, all audios in the voice form, in the video form, and we are able to communicate with each other because this fundamental fact that we are representing the knowledge, representing everything in terms of this basically two, in fact only one, and its negation. So 0 and 1, and that is what the switch realizes. And that then it was, once it was discovered that switch can be put in a small tiny form, a tiny dot like that kind of thing, which can create that switch. And from that switch we can create thousands of such switches and tens of thousands. And today I think at least I'm able to see 7.4 billion switches on the current generation chips that we are seeing in the 5 micron and the 5 nanometer and 3 nanometer foundries, which we see today happening. So I can imagine that when in my engineering education I could not see a transistor, I saw the transistors after his invention, 18 years after his invention. My teacher showed it to me in the beaker, and this is the transistor. And he did not allow us to touch those because only few pieces had come to India and to his engineering college. I could not touch. I could not imagine in my lifetime. Today I am designing circuits or along with my team members. How many? Close to, I think what we are talking about, 7.4 billion transistors in a single chip and multi-chips on a module like this kind of thing. And we are talking about developing the next generation supercomputers, what are called exascale supercomputers, 10 to the power 18 mathematical or the elementary mathematical operations. That is the kind of thing we are dealing with. The kind of memories which are dealing runs into not only exascale, but the zeta and iota scale memories. I think what you imagine. And we are building, right in this country, we are building in CDAC, one of the labs which I had the occasion to start on Pune University campus. Professor Karmakar is here, but on that campus, with great difficulty, I got some space in that thing. And there we are designing this chip. I would like to report to Dr. Mashelkar that we are actually today, whatever the circuits we are designing at that time, in spite of this one thing, this will be entirely designed. I'm not saying the in fabless foundries. We are creating a fabless foundry now on the campus, on CDAC campus. There is no fab. We'll be using the TSMC. With whom we have a good political relationship, not with Chinese, but TSMC, Taiwan's semiconductor foundry, which is the largest in the world. Even all complex circuits are manufactured there, and we are entering into a strategic alliance with that foundry to get all our chips designed. Today, all the chips which we are proposing in the next generation supercomputers, which will be exascale supercomputers, will be designed and manufactured in India. The know-how will belong to us. But they will be fabricated maybe in Taiwan or some other place. But Taiwan currently is one, and we have come to that stage. So this is the power of, I think, in this field. And I know most of you are aware of this, but this is something happening. And then this field has created one of the largest economies for India. Today we are talking about this is $180 billion. Very soon it will be $200 billion. When I began this field, there was almost non-existence. We did not know the spelling of information technology, including myself. I did not know the thing like that. That field started, and I think it crossed all our imaginations. So this is what I think the power of imagination. I now understand why Einstein said imagination is more important than invention or innovation, and that's why he was not so much attracted. He was more attracted to this to work in the laboratories of the mind. Dr. Mashelkar refers to this someday. We are, I think, and we are 1.4 billion minds in our country, and in the world 7-point-something billion people. I think these are the. I think this is the new religion of the world. I think this is the new what Harari talks about. That the data is the new religion. This is the new religion. If you don't understand, then you don't know what is development. So I think Bharat, when you talk about sustainable development means what? I think this imagination, this thinking. You are working on quantum dots. I think I not refer to quantum systems, quantum thing, which is the next frontier for all of us. And we must understand that when you talk about the whole universe, which is so large, billions and billions of galaxies, and I think we talk about the material there and some of the things. And one question was asked in this context. I would say that he refers to a professor in one of the YouTube talks. Looks at your ring, which you carry the gold. Is this gold created on the earth? He has a fundamental question. Was it here on the earth? He says, no, you are star materials. It was created on a giant stars somewhere, and then some meteors fell on this earth, and their gold was not made on this earth. In fact, most of the materials were not made on the earth, except for some few fundamental elements. And then he asked the question, what are we made of? He asked to the audience, what are we made of? And the answer comes that we are made of, mostly it is a hydrogen element which will dominate. That's what we see. He says, no, it is H2O. I think we are all water. 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen. And by mass, it is water. We are made of water. And that is the most fundamental thing which we are talking about. See, there are very fundamental questions on this case, I think material science. And that's why I think Dr. Mashelkar has brought out that most of the noble materials or rare materials or rare earths are not in India. And then we must think of, and most of it there, I think what God has in mind, that it was given to China, most of the things they own, and how are going to progress in that direction, because if out of the 118, I think only hardly few elements are going to be with us, I think, which we are able to think. We are looking at thorium and other things from the energy perspective, but I think we have to think something very differently. And that's where the quantum mechanics comes in. But that is not a subject today. But I'm very happy that the CMET, which was imagined when we started on the Electronics Commission, I think one of the reports of Dr. Bhabha report, which is called, had a chapter on materials technology, electronic materials. And they had recommended later on, when the Electronics Commission was getting formed with Professor Menon, they had recommended that there should be a laboratory for materials, electronic materials. There are many types of material, and that's how CMET came. That's how CMET came on my NCL campus, and then I was asked to really mentor it, or to just take it forward, and then we looked for land, and that's how the CMET is there, and all of us are there. I remember those days, and today CMET has made a lot of progress. We are talking about, I think, fundamental things, quantum dots and other things, and we were talking about, I will end with, I think what we came together mostly was one context was, what are these, in Ayurveda, what are the bhasmas, what we are talking about, that thing, now the nanotechnology, nanoscience has advanced so much, and we found that our bhasmas, what our ancient Charak and Sushruta and Vagbhat and others discovered, are nanomaterials, and they are very, very important from our health perspective. So and then we came to showing some bhasmas, and say we are talking about some which are very common, the Suvarna bhasma, or there are many Hirak bhasmas, and then are they really nanomaterials? And Dr. Kale knows that he helped us. I think an earlier director also helped us to discover that they are indeed nanomaterials, and we knew the nanomaterials, and we know the nanoprocesses using herbs. I think how to extract them, the herbs, and at certain temperatures. Very amazing technology. I think Dr. Mashelkar has mentioned that we must start a new chemistry called Ayur chemistry. I think which cannot explain today's green chemistry, etc. But there is Ayur chemistry, and from which I think it will throw new light on this chemistry. I got interested in that, and that's how I got connected to. And the second thing I'm now connected is the chemistry of neutrinos. I think the neutrinos, I think if the world is, I think, abundant with what? The whole universe is abundant, whatever we know of it, I think abundant with neutrinos. That shower comes in the fundamental, in the crust or in the core of suns and the stars and all that kind of thing. And there is this whole, I think, the cosmic shower across the whole universe, known and what is to be known on that kind of thing. And how does it affect materials? Can we go like photovoltaics? I think the engineering question is, like photovoltaics, can we generate voltaics of that thing, or neutrino voltaics, and abundant energy for the mankind, or for this thing? Will that be possible? And that is what the current research which I think the imagining, or how it will be done. And we are coming out with some experimental results on that with some German professors, and that appears to be our next frontier for CMET. And hope we make a enduring contribution to that. There is, in fact, infinite energy available to the mankind, and this problem will enter into new problems, which will be more difficult than what we have created for ourselves now. And it is this in the living materials, like the viruses, and the whole life sciences issue, and non-living materials which we are dealing with here, and they are already biologically combining in the materials lab, both the things, and we see how our progress are going to be there. So I'm very happy to get associated, which has raised several questions in my mind, and I shared my ignorance with all of you, whatever I do not know, and I thought I must start again. And I remember Professor Dr. Mashelkar has organized a meeting. I think we are celebrating the 80th birthday of Professor Whitesides, and in NCL, and I was listening to Professor Whitesides. He said, and he made his opening lecture. I think it was response to the honor that we had given him. He that one thing I come up to the 80 years, that I must now say that what I all taught, what I all understood is wrong, and I have to re-begin again. That is the same position with me, that what I all learned, I think I'm closing now, entering into 75th year, was wrong, or something very limited, and I have to enter again. So I have to get reborn on some other star and begin again. So thank you for inviting me, and this has inspired me. in the sense that it has put so many questions than I can answer before me. And these thoughts occurred to me in early morning at 3:30, and I will begin my, rest of my life with this new, I think, quest for knowledge. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your excellent talk. And we really appreciate your help in for many materials, guidance in material like Ayurvedic and all these things. We already did work. And our recent conference on Neutrino also helped us, help a lot for some new materials. Now, we are also fabricating 2D materials, and 2D materials decorated with semiconducting quantum dots, or metal clusters, and other metal oxides for different applications in whether we can capture the neutrino energy. So we are in the process of making all these 2D materials, and now we have fabricated quantum dot also. Now we are studying their electrical properties along with the industry. So actually, this outcome is I'm very happy that this outcome is because of Bhatkar sir, and he only initiated this activity. And during last year, we had a conference with German scientists and other people, and we really impressed to see that how this neutron energy is captured in some of the materials, 2D materials. So that work in progress. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your informative talk. Now I request Mashelkar sir to deliver his webinar talk, and people are waiting for you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thank you. The president of today's function, my brother, in fact, he is more than a brother to me. My most revered friend, my most revered brother, Dr. Vijay Bhatkar, Professor G.D. Yadav, I call him Shivaji, a new avatar, one and only other. His spirits are absolutely incredible. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nitin Karmarkar, Dr. Bharat Kale, honorable members of Maharashtra Academy of Science, and all of you who are today on this webinar. I have never felt more difficult to talk after Vijay's fantastic talk. I would say capital letters, fantastic in capital letters, most scintillating. Vijay, you are incredible. I think you are, what shall I say? You are beyond imagination. Your imagination is beyond our imagination. You took us to a different plane altogether, you know. Immaterial science, science to silent, material to matter, and the kind of question that you raise. And you are absolutely right, as a matter of fact, that more we know, less we know. And there are more questions that we need to. So I hope, Bharat, you have recorded this talk.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah, because I want to listen to it again.
Yeah.
And then again, and then again, you know, to understand, because every sentence of is full of sort of meanings, you know. So I think our morning has been just lighted. It is an incredible morning. So it's very difficult for me to follow such a great act, but I'll try to do that. Actually, I'm not going to talk on materials. The title of my talk that I gave was on Atmanirbhar Bharat, but creating Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas and with Atma Sanman. I repeat that. Atmanirbhar Bharat, that's what our Honorable Prime Minister has challenged us with, inspired us with. But how do you do it Atmavishwas? How do we do it with Atma Sanman? And that is what I'm going to basically focus on. And you have given me 1 hour. I'm not going to speak for 1 hour. I'll finish it in a sort of shorter time. But to begin with, let me start with the theme on materials and sustainable development. According to me, if you ask me, what will the world be focusing on in the 21st century? I like to just summarize it at 3 Ds: digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. I repeat, digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. In fact, they are completely interdependent. And materials are going to play the greatest role in this. I don't have to prove it. For example, you take silicon. It was silicon which made digitalization possible. It is silicon which made decentralization possible and also decarbonization possible. I mean, if you look at, for example, solar energy, all right? But for silicon, it would not have been possible. Integrated circuit would not have been possible, the digitalization, without silicon. Now, when we say work from home, that had been entirely possible because of digitalization, and that led to decentralization of offices. I mean, and home took, let us say, the function of not only office, of school. Today, 1.69 billion children are out of school, and for them, home is their school, etc. So you can see that all these get connected. Now, for example, work from home was possible because of digitalization. And I was talking to Mr. Ravi Pandit, one of the most revered industry leaders. And currently, his people are working from home, 90% of them. And he says, when we start, 50% of them will work from home. And he explained to me, he said, why should I carry them by buses? You know, wasting 3 hours of their time in communicating back and forth, burning diesel, creating carbon footprint. So digitalization is leading to decentralization of work and decarbonization because the carbon footprint will vanish. So you can quite clearly see how the world is going to change, and materials are going to play the greatest role in this. Don't forget that last year's Nobel Prize went to Professor Goodenough and the others for lithium-ion batteries, basically, material, because that is the one which is creating this sort of new world. And therein lies also a great challenge for Atmanirbhar Bharat. I mean, Vijay, you did not leave any point which was was most important. And you talked about rare earths, shortage of that, and in terms of our vulnerability. Yes, I'm worried. We're all going for electric vehicles. Yes, we should. But they are all based on lithium-ion batteries. Cobalt is a critical material there. And cobalt is produced in Congo, a rogue country. If you see, Australia has 50% of lithium production. They have taken over Chile now. But if you see, 90% of the systems are manufactured in China. So when we say, and I'm going to come to the China issue sort of little later, in terms of our security, our vulnerability is huge, as a matter of fact. And therefore, when I see people working on alternatives like sodium, for example, or I also know there are some zinc manganese based systems that are also being looked at, I can quite clearly see. So internal security of India is going to depend upon the critical availability of materials. So we are dealing with an extraordinarily important issue. And I talked about 3 Ds, that is the digitalization, decentralization, decarbonization. There's a 4th D that is coming up thanks to COVID, and that is disinfection. Because people are going to be extremely conscious of, when were you last time so conscious about touching a surface, for example? So decontamination, disinfection, etc., are going to be major multi-billion-dollar industries. Today, we talk about face masks, okay? And those face masks, when they are made of ordinary cotton, And of course, you can create N95 masks, etc., etc. But they are all preventive. That means they prevent the bacteria and virus from coming in. But they don't kill the bacteria. They don't inactivate the virus. They stay there. All right. And then there is a huge issue of biomedical waste. Because we are not a very disciplined society, we put them we don't dispose them, and if they are not managed well, the municipal workers, bare hands, they are handling them, what challenge it will come. And that is where newer and newer breakthroughs are going to come. There is a company in Switzerland, it is called Living Guard. And they have created a kind of a next generation let's say innovation, again coupled with very good material science, by the way. And I have this mask here, okay? Now, if you look at this mask, there are 3 layers here, by the way. The outer layer is such that it's a positively charged surface. There are certain cationic compounds which have been sort of coated here. So it is strongly positively charged, okay? So if somebody who is infected with virus, he speaks, that virus, as soon as it sits on this top surface, basically, it gets deactivated. The weakly negatively charged parts of the virus outer cover, basically, they get attracted, and there are about 24 billion charges, by the way, per square centimeter on this. Okay, so that is that. But supposing you yourself are a COVID patient, so there is this inner cover that is also coated positive. So what happens? As soon as you exhale those also get killed. And in between, there is a layer which has 99.9% filtration efficiency. 1, 2, 3. So from outside, from inside, as well as the filtration. So the normal masks, N95, will be preventive. They will prevent the bacteria and virus coming in. But this is protective because it deactivates the bacteria, deactivates the virus. Why I'm specifically mentioning this, that in this new world, post-COVID world, material science will have to move in this fashion and create these kinds of next-gen products by them. I'm just giving you one example. Now with that, I come to the basic theme. I think, Professor Yadav gave a very remarkable presentation in terms of pre-COVID and post-COVID. It's wonderfully done. I would say that there is a word before COVID and after COVID. And the two have no relationship. The dramatic change is so massive. I think the first of all, it is the rapidity of change. Vijay, do you know that 1331, history repeats itself, by the way. 1331 also, from China, there's a transmission to Italy, by the way. Of what? The bubonic plague, which spread its Black Death. Same, history repeats, 1331. You know how much time it took to go from China to Italy? 16 years. 2020, coronavirus has moved from China to Italy. In what time? 16 weeks. So 16 years to 16 weeks. That is the rapidity. And then the massiveness of what has happened. Rapidity as well as massiveness. You can see 71 million people have been moved from poverty to extreme poverty. And so many years of work has gone down the drain. And again, we have to sort of bring them up. Close to 15 million people infected, close to 1 million, have died. I think it is an incredible sort of tragedy. I would also say that many things that have happened are old ideas, but they are accelerated. Like work from home, Vijay, you are the guru and the master. Indian IT created a global revolution by pioneering remote work 3 decades ago. So it was not that there is something new. Accepting what has happened is that the speed has increased enormously, the scale has improved enormously, and the scope, in a sense, home taking different kinds of such. So speed, scale, and scope. Telemedicine, it was creeping, it was happening. But how rapidly it has happened? UK, for example, says, so one medical practitioner said that what we would have done in 10 years, we have done in 10 days, as far as telemedicine is concerned. And that's not a bad news for India, because the number of doctors per patient, for example, is so minuscule, as a matter of fact, that is something that we have to sort of welcome. The other part I would like to say is that we are now restarting, we are rebuilding, we are recovering. But while that is being done, it will be done very carefully. So people will not worry so much about return on capital, but return of capital, if you understand what I mean. Because safety first, you know. Similarly, if you see global supply chains, they have been disrupted. And previously it was just in time. Now they will store, they will say just in case. You don't know how the global supplies are going to be basically affected. And my hope is that when we talk about recovery, we only talk about economic recovery, not the environment recovery, because the environment before pre-COVID had these dirty skies and dirty Jamunas and grey Jamunas. They turned into blue skies and blue Jamunas. Okay? So we hope we recover the economy, but not recover the same bad old environment. That means we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to reimagine ourselves. So rather than recovering, I would say, let us reimagine and reinvent, because it's a chance, you know. I think most important, Vijay, I feel, is the similarity between pandemics and climate change. Suddenly, it has brought climate change into focus, by the way. Because if you see, they are both physical, pandemics as well as climate shocks. Because both physical, they create an array of socio-economic impact. Both are systemic. They have knockout effect, which propagate fast across interconnected world. Both are non-stationary. You know, the past cannot predict future. Both are non-linear socio-economic impact. You know, growth non-linearly, exponentially, as we have seen. You know, both are risk multipliers, and particularly there are untested vulnerabilities in healthcare system. For example, I've just got exposed, and they hit the poor the most. The migrant labor. We have seen how young children and grandmothers and grandfathers were walking kilometers. As a matter of fact, you know, one could not sleep at night. So I think what I would like to suggest, Vijay, is that the current pandemic provides us a trailer of what will happen if a full-fledged climatic crisis would evolve. It has given a trailer, because that climate change will have huge disruption on demand side, huge disruption on supply side, and huge spread of global transmission and global amplification. So I think it's time to pause and reflect, basically. You know, somehow or the other, I mean, as a scientist, I should not be talking about God and things, but I think there's a signal. Look, pause, take a pause, and have a reset. I think there's an opportunity for us for a reset, so as to say, rather than, again, incrementally moving. I want to spend a few minutes on what our Prime Minister has said about Atmanirbhar Bharat. And as I said, we have to do it with Atmavishwas and Atmasamman. So the idea of self-reliant India is not going to be protection with high tariff barriers like what we had. We protected ourselves, isolation. Not isolation, but integration with global supply chains. You know, that is very important. So whereas we say, be vocal for local, yes, that is true for product, but be vocal for global. I mean, that is the editorial that I, Vijay Kelkar, and Niranjan Rajaraksha read, and that global is remain integrated with global systems. You can't isolate yourself in today's world. That is one strong feeling. Now, how do you reinvent this India? People talk about two pillars, buy or make. I would say no. we have to build it on 5 pillars. And here are the 5 pillars. First is buy. Second is make. Third is buy to make better. Fourth is make to buy better. And last is make it together. And Vijay, you have done it all. I'll come to that. For example, buy. I remember I was listening to UNESCO Director General Federico Mayer, and he said, knowledge flows from west to east. Knowledge flows from west to east, and wisdom flows from east to west. And I remember correcting him, saying that yes, knowledge does flow from west to east, but not usable knowledge which can create wealth. It is not easily available. So even if you have dollars, you will not be able to get technology. And I'm very happy Professor G.D. Yadav is here and he will know it. I mean, look at just chemicals. You know, Vijay, we always thought that, you know, it is only in strategic areas like supercomputers or cryogenic engines that we don't have technology. I'm sorry. Even if it comes to clothes washing or even if it comes to sanitary napkins, you don't get technology. I will explain as a chemical engineer. And Yadav will appreciate that. You know, I remember I was on the board of directors of IPCL, Indian Petrochemicals. And we wanted alpha olefin technology. Why? Because we make alpha olefin sulfonate. Why? Because they are very good detergents, biodegradable. Better than the linear alkyl benzene that we have. Now, there is nothing strategic about clothes washing. We did not get the technology. Acrylic acid, Rome and Haas, we pleaded. We did not get the technology. We wanted to make baby diapers. Butyl rubber, since we are talking about Butkia. For 40 years, we did not get the technology. Finally, Reliance managed to get it from Russia, by the way. So, therefore, I think we should not imagine that just because we have money or friendship, full of the technologies will be available. So, we have to be self-reliant from that particular perspective. That's number one. The second is make. Make in India, of course, we have launched it. But I would only make one correction. Make in India does not mean assembled in India. It is invented in India. There's a penalty you have to pay if you are just depending upon the assembly. You know, these iPhones, for example, they are made in China.
Yes.
Every iPhone, Foxconn takes $10. Okay? Apple takes $350. Okay? But when you take that $10, you also make 4.5 million jobs. So we require jobs. So what are the options before India? One is just sweat it out, make iPhones, create 4.5 million jobs, just take $10. The other way is think, create, like Apple, and take $250, but minimum jobs, because tech jobs are small. But the third option is sweat it out, get the jobs, think it through, and also get that $250, $10 plus $250. Make in India, but invent in India. And if you just, Vijay, it's very interesting, and I'm addressing Vijay because Vijay is in front of me, by the way, on a big screen. So my lecture is being addressed. It is almost like two brothers talking to each other, by the way. So forgive me. You all are there, but I'm talking to Vijay. See, the penalty for just assembled, for example, take Indian Mobile. In 2015 and 2019, just 4 years. 2015, the market share of Indian manufacturers like Micromax or Cornell was 45%. In 4 years, it came down from 45% to 7%. 45 to 7. Then who ate our lunch? The Chinese ate our lunch. In 2015, they were 9%. And 2019, they went up to 68%. So we went down from 45 to 7, and they went up from 9 to 68. How did that happen? Because we had the trading business model, you know, assembly of SDQs, as you know, no value creation, no innovation, no research. Whereas China, there was a continuous innovation, customization to local needs, etc., etc., etc. you know. So we can't do that. We can't just say make in India means assemble in India. We have to invent it. That is where research, innovation, investment, they're coming. So what have I explained out of 5 pillars? 2 pillars, buy and make. The third one is buy to make better. Now, many times you may not have your own technologies. You'll buy them from outside, but then you become number one. Transistor is a great example. As Vijay, you know, the patents, US patents on transistors were acquired by Sony, and they became number one in terms of transistor manufacturer. So buying to make better. And even if you see, for example, Biocon is in the news today for the itolizumab, you know, which was actually they had got that molecule from Latin America. They developed it for psoriasis, and today they are looking at it for the COVID. Because when you have the cytokine storm, you know, it can sort of prevent it. Okay, that is buying to make it better. It was not their molecule. I mean, look at Geo. I don't know how many of you have witnessed the AGM, and in that AGM, Mukesh, both Isha and Akash showed the the Geo glass and the virtual reality, augmented reality, etc., etc. You know who did that actually? It was not the Reliance's creation. They had acquired this startup called Tesseract, you know, who Fujiji Marwa, basically, he worked in a small workplace, and then he was the one who actually created it. So this is what is buying to make better. Now, when you buy, it is not just technology. It is components also. We heard Rajiv Bajaj speak on the other day. He said, I export 15,000 crore of two-wheelers, but I do import 1,000 crore worth components from China, and my export depends upon those critical components. So we have to also realize how much dependent we are on China. For example, the drugs and pharma industry. You know, we are number one in generic industry, but 70% of APIs, that is active pharmaceutical ingredients, which are the intermediates, we depend on China. So all this talk about boycott China, if you were to take it seriously, it means zero China. That means 70% to 0% overnight. What will happen to our industry? It will come to zero if we do it overnight. And there has to be a graded approach. And the graded approach is not China less, less China, less and less China, less and less China, and do it fast, of course, basically, over a period of time. So I think there has to be a balanced thinking and a policy. I mean, Vijay, you will know more. Electronics, 45%, you know, we are dependent upon them. We can't bring it to 0%. And you will know about electronics more than anybody else on what is the kind of situation. So I think this shock is a good one. I think in a sense, it will really shake us up and wake us up. And I'm very happy that the government is taking so many proactive roles, like, for example, API. You know, they are investing very heavily in creating API paths, CSIR. See, after all, we are talking about process chemistry and process engineering. If you were to list top 5 competencies of India, I would say process chemistry and process engineering is one. And we can do that. That's not an issue at all. And you will see that that is happening. The next one is make to buy better. And Vijay, you are the most sterling example of that. You know, for example, everybody talks about Param and supercomputer. You will remember, we had that discussion in Science Advisory Committee to the Prime Minister. And then the nation trusted you $10 million in 3 years, and you delivered it in less than $10 million in 3 years. And CDAC is a magical story. And then you had the Param 8000 in 1991. And if you remember, you exported to Russia in 1992 and Canada. Okay. And I remember the Washington Post headline saying that angry India does it. Having been angered on the 9th supercomputer, angry India did it. And I have been always asking, why are we not angry every day? I mean, we would be very different if that was the case. So you did that. And then in 1998, you had Param 10,000, the 100 gigaplus machine. And the same Cray which was denying us the technology, came and said, we want to manufacture. This is what is called making to buy better. Making gives you the strength. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam always used to tell me that Mashelkar, strength respects strength. You can extend your hand, but whether somebody will shake your hand or not depends upon how strong your hand is. That's what you did, Vijay. Now, I'll give you an example from, this is strategic, but non-strategic I'll give you. The same alpha olefin story. So for getting alpha olefin, we went to Idemitsu in Japan. They said no technology. Shell, in Europe, they said no. Chevron, no. I was on the board. I said, let's do alpha olefin ourselves. What the hell? Why not? And Dr. Sivaram, who later on became the director of NCL, by the way, he was in charge. And he developed a superb process. And then we had to prove it to go before commercial to what we call as a pilot plant, And somehow the finance guys came in the way and it was not funded. And I remember one of those, I will not name him, representatives of this company was traveling with me in the plane and he said, we are watching you very closely. And had you done the pilot plant, we would have given you the technology. Because we knew that you will do something which is superior and our market share will be gone. That is making to buy better. Okay? So that is the third strategy, fourth strategy. And the last one is making it together. That is the public-private partnership, like what we did in NIMITLI, New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative. You'll remember BioSuit we created. What was that? Bioinformatics was a buzzword in year 2000, but the basic challenge was that Accelerus, the best software, was $500,000. Our small biotech companies could not afford it. So we lined, I remember going to TCS, talking to Dr. Vidyasagar, and I'm a 10x guy. It has to be 10 times better and 10 times cheaper. I said something which is 10 times better than Accelerus. And he was also crazy like me. He said, I will do it. But they did not know biology. Tata did not know biology. So I lined up 19 laboratories. And that included University of Pune, by the way, the Bioinformatics Center, CCMB, and so on. And put in just $5 million. And within 18 months, BioSuit actually came. That's the kind of public-private partnership based on grand challenges. And I think that is what we have to do. The New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative was actually sort of that. And that is changing now very dramatically. I mean, the open source drug discovery that my successor, Samir Brahmachari, created by using Web 2.0 had 136 countries and 4,200 participants to create a new tuberculosis molecule. And out of that, by the way, 40% were students. Can you imagine students participating in that? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about making it together, it is taking a different dimension altogether. I mean, when we talk about the rotavirus vaccine, there were 16 partners who finally came and Bharat Biotechs are actually producing. So let me summarize what I have talked. I have said that not two pillars, buy or make, 5 pillars. Buy, make, buy to make better, make to buy better, and make it together. And as the country advances, this landscape actually changes. So we require, I would say, a national strategy, where this is also basically incorporated. The next point I would make is, and I will end with this, that I gave you the 5 pillars, and I would tell you about the 3 force multipliers on which India has to base Atmanirbhar Bharat. Talent, technology, and trust. I repeat, talent, technology, and trust. Talent, we have no doubt. I mean, I remember Atalji used to say, India's future is in IT. IT as in information technology. And I used to say, yes, India's future is in IT, but not as in information technology, but as in Indian talent. IT as in Indian talent. So on that, we have absolutely no doubt. Technology, yes, but what matters is the trust, actually. Giving our young people a chance, for example. And that is where I think India has floundered, if you ask. That's why I'm saying Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas. I'll give you an example, and again, Vijay, you will know it better than I do. Just recall your mind to Simputer, 2001. Simputer was a low-cost alternative to PC. Shared devices that could permit truly simple and natural user interface based on touch, sight, and audio at that time. It could read and speak 7 Indian languages. And most importantly, what I was impressed was what iPhone did later, what Samsung Galaxy did later. Some of those features they had incorporated there. For example, iPhone had this accelerometer, if you remember.
Yes.
Or Samsung Galaxy, for example, that Bangalore Mail or ability to write on phone, etc., etc. You know, so they were ahead, actually. Can you imagine the talent and technology that we had? And Bruce Sterling of New York Times, I have got his, this thing, by the way, the quote. He said, the most significant innovation in computer technology was not Apple's gleaming PowerBook 4G, nor Microsoft Windows XP. It was Simputer, a net-link, radically simple portable computer intended to bring computer revolution in the third world. That is how it was rated, 2001. What happened to it? Did the revolution come? No. It vanished. Why? Trust. So we should have trusted. And then normally when such breakthroughs come, the government public procurement policy comes. You order 10,000. You give a chance. You know, then you get market feedback. You refine the design, create a good business plan. And that is how it started. In fact, I've written a chapter about public procurement policy, by the way, Amitabh Kant's new book on what are the 17 things that can transform India, how that public procurement policy based on trust can be actually done. In Maharashtra State Innovation Council, for example, we have created a startup policy where supposing, this is the problem, supposing Sachin Tendulkar scores Ranji Trophy century when he's 50. But they say, we can't admit you into the test because where is your 10-year experience? We can't do this with startups, no? So we have created within Maharashtra system where on a trust base, we do away with the normal tender process and give a chance. Like somebody had developed drone, for example, okay, which could do work on a surface of rivers or water and clean. So PCMC gave them the contract and they were successful and now they are doing it in other cities. Had they gone through the normal process, they would not have. So we need to take those risks, bet on the young, and then win. So talent, technology, and trust, I think, is going to be sort of most important. And if we build on that, I think we'll just fly. So my lecture, I will not take my full hour. I would say, let us just think about these 5 pillars, and I've given you examples to illustrate what those strong pillars would be. And I'm saying talent, technology, and trust as the 3 force multipliers. If we do this, we will win. I'd like to end by reading something which I saw recently and was really inspired. You know, we are in these times where we are locked down at homes. It's like a knockdown as far as this is concerned. And there's a problem. And then one wonders, Vijay, what can we do in a pandemic? So I, you know, this Howard Alper was formerly the Prime Minister of Canada's scientific advisor for almost 9 years. He sent me something as an exchange during this pandemic time. So I will read it out to all of us. And because it is about human spirit that will triumph for a pandemic. You know, of course, people call me dangerous optimist, but this is what gives me the optimism, by the way. The young people give me the optimism. This gives me the optimism. So I will read that and end my talk. So this is by Rarest Blue by Baruch and Judy Sturman. And I will mail this to you, Vijay, because you will like it, and all of you. Basically, you can circulate it among our Maharashtra Academy of Science members also. So there is a quote. We owe our modern understanding of light and color to the multifaceted genius of 17th century Englishman Isaac Newton. England saw its last major outbreak of bubonic plague in 1665-1666. just as we have this.
Yes.
And as a precautionary measure, the students at Cambridge University, including young Newton, were sent home till the following year, exactly like what we are doing today. He spent his enforced vacation working on ideas underlying his spectacular accomplishments in that 1 year of pandemic. First, gravitation. Second, laws of motion. Third, calculus. And fourth, optics. I repeat, gravitation, laws of motion, calculus, and optics all came during the lockdown time, during that sort of 1 year. So Alexander Pope captured his achievement brilliantly in a famous couplet intended for an epitaph. He said, nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, let Newton be, and all was light. I think that is the spirit.
That is the spirit, yes.
Huh? Do you agree, Vijay?
Absolutely.
I think with that spirit, that human spirit, we'll get over the pandemic and India will fly. Atmanirbhar Bharat with Atmavishwas and with Atma Sanman. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, sir.
Wonderful, yes. You enhanced our Atmavishwas.
Yes.
Yes.
We can do it. We can do it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, India can do it. Yeah. Bharat, your mic is, unmute your mic. Unmute your mic.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember you, sir, when you were a director of NCL, and I have seen your hard work. We used to come after dinner to work our PhD work, and your light used to be on till 1 o'clock in the night. So that was inspiring us all the time, sir. Though you were the director at that time, though you were having the office in chemical engineering department, and you used to work till 1 o'clock. That was really inspiring us, and every day, almost every day, when you were in the Pune, you used to be.
Bharat, actually, can I
inspired us, and
can I interrupt and say something?
Yeah.
I still do that, by the way. In fact, my message. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
we can. Yeah.
Yeah. My message to young students is like instant coffee. There is no instant success. You have to work hard. And I tell them I work 24/7, day after day, month after month, year after year, and will continue to do so till I breathe my last. The only advice I give them is that work hard in silence.
Yes,
Let
sir.
success make all the noise, because we start making noise even before we are successful. So that continues even today at 77.
Yes. That is inspiration for us, and thank you for helping us CMET from the beginning, because you were the director that time, and all these premises, rental premises, and all in Merado campus, all these things because of you, and on that onwards we really progressed well. Now I have time, so I can brief you. So now we have almost we have all nanomaterials processing facility in our lab. We can do all kind of nanometals in large scales, metal alloys, 100 grams per hour copper nanoparticle, 100 grams per hour aluminum nanoparticle we can produce in CMET. Now, this was the requirement of the DRDO, and we have supplied them 5 kg, 10 kg of aluminum, because they use in propellant this aluminum copper. And with that we started. Now we are supplying some of the materials to the ISRO, because strategic sector, they need some very small amount of like 5 kg, 10 kg. So like aluminum nitride is for high power electronics substrate that we are making now, and we are supplying to them. And all kind of nanostructure we started making since 1999, because that onwards we felt that if you really want to go for miniaturization of devices, then we really need these kind of facility, and we established a facility. Now we can make any kind of semiconductors, quantum dots. Then we developed a method. We can have quantum dots in glasses. That is unique expertise in CMET we have, and we applied this quantum dots of semiconductor in glasses in many photonics applications, as well as in some. Recently, we also found that when we leach out these quantum dots, and these glasses can be used as an electrolyte in the solid state batteries. So we have a renewable energy program like on hydrogen. So we produce hydrogen under natural sunlight, and first time we use these glasses, because these glasses has a band gap from UV to almost IR. So whole spectrum of light they can absorb, and maximum electrons and holes generated by photoexcitation. And then we found that these quantum dots has 10 times more hydrogen evolution as compared to normal.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great one.
So that we found, and we have a US patent on this. Then we made materials for solar cells, then fuel cells like platinum dots, some 1 nanometer to 10 nanometer platinum. Then we replaced platinum with cobalt and nickel later on for the fuel cell technology, because platinum is costly. So we replaced little platinum with cobalt and nickel. Then we also started putting nickel and cobalt with carbon. Very thin carbon was coated on the this metal, and then it worked well. With the NIT Warangal, we did this work. Then we have already dye-sensitized solar cell. All these kind of solar cells, all this we make it here and prototype. Then we established a facility for hydrogen, the energy storage like lithium-ion battery. So we can make pouch cells, we can make button cells. Now we are making cylindrical cells. We develop indigenous cathode, anode. This is established facility. Then ministry says that why don't we have a center of excellence in rechargeable batteries? Then we have taken we established this center here. Now this center is funded by MIT of 12 crores and 8 crores from the industry, from the 4-5 industries. In the they have some kind contribution or some manpower also they are sharing. In this center of excellence, we can develop the materials as well as machineries. Because what happened, all machines for this lithium battery fabrication comes from China. Now we had a lot of problems from the Chinese import. So now we are educating industry how to make these coating machines, how to make this, because we have small machines, and whether we can go for large scale. See, anyway, after 5 years, we'll have somebody will import the technology of lithium-ion battery. We have full-fledged lithium-ion battery manufacturing. But somebody has to be there to support this activity, like through R&D. So we have this facility now. So we are introducing some startups so they can make the material, cathode material, anode material, and also electrolyte. So that we can here we can.
I'm very happy to hear
in
this.
The materials.
I'm very happy to hear this.
Yeah.
Because this is where the strategic thinking will be required. Even Niti Aayog is also sort of moving in have big plans on this, and I think this fits in perfectly. I must congratulate you because I remember you as an infant in you know that Merado
yes.
has some magic. That is where you started, Amarnerkar and all of
Yeah,
you.
yeah, Amarnerkar.
Yes. But that place has some magic. You started CMET there and you have grown to such technology powerhouse. ISER, Indian Institute of Science Education Research, started there and they are now the best ISER.
Okay, sir.
And the Venture Center, you know, which Premnath leads, started there. And when India actually announced that they will give the best incubator award at the hands of the President of India, the first award went to that incubator.
Oh,
So there is some magic in that place, by the way. The graduates from that place rise to great, great heights. And as an old man, I feel particularly happy.
thank you, sir. So,
Great,
so
great.
we started with sodium ion battery, then we developed sodium ion battery also because lithium is a problem.
Yeah, I know.
Then
No, but they have to now, from the invention stage, they have to be taken to the full scale.
yeah,
Where you know,
now,
Yeah.
sir, now we are tying up with industry because each project is tied with industry now.
you must commercial.
Further, they are taking up
Yeah, commercial products. That's
commercial
it.
production. Now, considering 5 years, now we need flexible batteries because flexible electronics will come. So now we have developed flexible batteries also.
Very good.
We can have belt. Now we have a stretchable batteries.
Excellent.
So that also we can. And recently, as we developed this swab
So,
first time in India.
I read about that. That was
Yeah,
very
so
good.
this is the first means we introduced in March
I saw that.
with the design and all these things, and now
Very good.
the production is already started in Bangalore.
Yeah, very good.
As you mentioned about the mask, now this is again antiviral mask. As there are 3 layers. Upper layer is coated with our nanoparticles. These basically nanoparticles of 3 to 4 nanometers. Each mask has only 10 milligrams of coating.
But is it silver?
No, this is not silver. This is actually the bismuth zinc alloy. Because this this virus has a layer of sulfur. This fatty acid also contains the sulfur. These nanoparticles can attract the sulfur. Thiol group, I can say it's a thiol group. This thiol group is attracted by these nanoparticles and the viruses get deactivated. So we have made almost 1,000 masks and we have supplied to hospitals. Though
Have you tested it with?
we have tested antibacterial, but the antiviral testing we have given to NIV.
Yeah.
Now.
SARS-CoV-2, you should test it.
Yeah. So
Anyway, we'll take it offline. I think
Yes,
it is
sir.
getting into a conversation between me and you. I think yeah. And I'll call you up. I'll call you up later. I'm
okay, sir. Thank you very much, and thanks for giving us time. Now, again, it's my duty to for vote of thanks is at the end. So, it's Dimitri great honor to propose the vote of thanks to all who have helped us in this making this webinar resounding success. First of all, I would like to thank to our webinar president Bhatkar sir for his valuable time, and I think he has given a talk about materials, immaterials, and also on the quantum dots, because we took some of the ideas with this after discussion with him and went ahead like in Ayurveda, and as also now neutron energy we are going ahead. So thank you, sir. Thanks for your time today. I would like to express my gratitude to our distinguished webinar speaker, Mashelkar sir, for taking out time for his busy schedule, because all the time he's busy, but I thought that he will not give us time, but he has given time for this Maharashtra Academy. That is great for us. Thank you, sir. Thank you for and sharing for your profound views on the today's current scenario in the technologies. Also, I would like to extend a special thank to our Karmarkar sir, because he has also agreed to present in this webinar and also agreed to give the space to Maharashtra Academy in Pune University. And thank you, sir. Thank you for your presence. I also wish to express my gratitude to our MSc President, Maharashtra Academy President. Now the Maharashtra Academy ni kaap takli asं मी म्हणेल because of sir, because his activeness, and he only says that we should have some place for the Maharashtra Academy. Then and then we can do something. And he gave us a free hand, and we have so many fellows, almost 800 fellows, and Now the foreign fellows have also been increased a lot. So this is because of the sir, and thank you, sir. Thank you for your guidance and supporting this webinar. And I also thanks to my colleagues because they helped me a lot for arranging this event, and coordinators, colleagues, and volunteers who have been looking for every minutes and offline, because I have seen now many people are watching us. Almost there are almost 700 registration today.
Yeah.
Of the people are watching on their YouTubes, and I think 160 people are live watching our live web seminar. But many people are on other indirect like YouTubes and other things. Finally, a big thank to wonderful students and participants, because participants they really were enthusiastic to see hear from Bhatkar sir and you, sir, and maybe because of now they also say that, sir, we would like to see the recording of this web seminar, and we are doing it. Thanks to all our participants for participating in this web seminar, and grateful for turning this web seminar a great success. See you. Have a good day and stay safe. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable time. And sir, I would like to inform you that we will have one more international web seminar on 9th. Professor Vinayak Dravid has agreed to give this lecture on this occasion. And
no, I know him very well. He's a very good person. Very good.
And one more professor from Germany, Professor Holger. I think Bhatkar sir knows him very well, because he is associated with this, and he is working on neutron energy. So he will give some light on this neutron energy. Very few people knows about it, and he has done some prototype for the capturing this neutron, and that people will be more excited to see that kind of devices. So on 9th, and I also request you if you can come for on that day for 5-10 minutes the discussion, Bhatkar sir and yourself, then it will be better for us. And again, it is sponsored by Maharashtra Academy of Sciences, because one more, and we have basically we also we are also talking about rural area colleges. So one of the rural area colleges in Shirur, they are organizing this. We are just supporting them, because they want to see that the rural area student also see this kind of web seminars. Thank you, sir. Thank you for time. Thank you for your valuable time, and also thanks to participants. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Sir.